Welcome into another edition of the Cavalier Connection podcast. I'm your host, Jack, joined by my dad, Jeff Lowe, and Jay Ballard. How are you guys doing tonight, Jay?
Doing great.
Doing great. Yeah, ready to talk who's.
Been
Absolutely.
2 weeks for me, so.
Yeah, it has. You're back from your little hiatus. You were signing autographs at the pool, I hear.
Yep.
You're having a good time. I'm glad to have you back. Before we get into this episode, Dad, can you go ahead and talk to our audience about our friends over at Mincer's?
No, Mincer's is institution over there at the corner. 1948 when things began there at the old Mincer's site. And I know Jay and I have told the story before about the first time we went into Mincer's. And we just couldn't believe our eyes, all the Virginia gear and anything you could want. And I walked out with a champion. I remember not a championship shirt, but the champion brand, navy blue UVA long sleeve shirt. But I was going to say for all you football fans, when you take your kids to Charlottesville this year, it's right around the corner, less than 4 weeks away. Stop in at Mincer's and give them a story they can tell when they start their podcast. 15, 20 years from now, they'll be remembering their first trip to Mincer's. Stop in, say hello, tell them the Cavalier Connection sent you. Definitely check them out. 1948 start time. This is 2025. By the time those kids grow up and get their podcast, it's going to be 100 years old. But anything you want, they've got it. It's all quality. And that's our friends over at Mincer's.
Got this hat from them. Really, really nice hat. It's hard to see with the way the lighting is.
This
Got
is all
some gear over
Mincer's
there,
right
too.
here.
Yeah, of course,
Yeah.
This is Mincer's.
Absolutely. And that'll also, thanks for that, Dad, that'll lead us into our Mincer's moment of the week. Virginia football, obviously, been posting some videos from camp. You have fall camp going on every day. And this is one of their videos they post, so let's take a look at it.
Embrace the suck. Winning championships, it ain't easy.
There you have it. It's one of those videos that fires you up every time, Jay.
Yeah, saw Josiah Abdullah, Dylan Newton Short, friends of the show, catching some balls. One of the things that I love right out of the gate was embrace the suck. Because if you're not ready to work, it's summer camp I'm sure is daunting for these guys. But if you can just embrace the suck of it, it'll pay huge dividends in the fall.
It's funny you say that. For those of you who don't know, I umpire youth baseball, and we go through our trainings in the spring. And one of our oldest veterans in the entire association, he tells us the same thing every meeting: embrace the suck. And that's what we do. And we turn out to be successful umpires.
That's because they suck.
Some say it for different reasons. Some say it for different reasons.
Oh, gosh.
On today's episode of the Cavalier Connection, we're joined by one of the most trusted voices covering UVA athletics, Greg Madia of the Daily Progress. Greg has a finger on the pulse of both Virginia football and basketball. And today we're diving into fall camp storylines, depth concerns, and Coach Elliott, and in basketball, what to expect from Ryan Odom's squad in year one. Let's get into it.
Yep. Greg, we appreciate your time. And I think you've been a busy man. I saw where you were on the Who's On I can't talk, the Who's On podcast. I guess I don't know if that was today or it's coming out with Preston. So pretty cool. But we appreciate your time.
Yeah, no, happy to do it. It's that time of year, right? It's the
right.
time of year where things start to get a little busier as football, as you round the corner on football. Happy to do it, though. Love it. Can't get enough.
Right. Yeah. So big picture, what's the overall pulse of the football team heading into this season, and what's the identity you think they're trying to build?
Yeah, Jeff, good question right off the bat. I think for me, it's a team with a little more urgency than the past few years and a little more expectation. I think there are players who are tired of being part of a losing season, losing team, and I think there's a coaching staff that realizes that they've got to start to produce some positive results. And I think with the acquisition of 32 transfers, a lot of those guys, older, experienced players, that you can push them a little bit, and you can start to make sure they're going to be on the same page come August 30th when Coastal Carolina comes to town. For me, it's simple, right? It's great that you can recruit all these players. It's exciting that Virginia's decided to spend some money in the portal, but it all has to work. It all has to fit. And I think you could, one of the first signs of the maybe difference in urgency was Tony Elliott going with Chandler Morris even before training camp began, right? Everyone kind of knew he was going to be the starter. Why let a, phony quarterback battle play out, right? There was no reason to. Give the team an identity and a person to trust going into the summer. And that's kind of the first sign of it for me, where Virginia is all steam ahead, pushing forward with a group that has to gel together. So that's kind of the vibe I get at this point. There's a little more urgency, a little more excitement, a little more expectation than the past few years.
Yeah, for sure. And we're definitely excited, but I don't think that the media was as excited about Virginia. They were picked 14th out of 17th, I believe, in the ACC preseason poll.
Yeah.
Think that's fair, unfair, or why do you think?
I put them 8th. I thought they were going to be better. I think they're going to be better. I think they're improved. They'd probably pull back a little bit after the McKeelan Thomas injury. That to me is a big loss. But from a national perspective or an ACC perspective, like when you look at Virginia, you may not understand how hard they hit the portal this past offseason. And then you look at, the recent results, which hasn't been good. Last year was 5-7 and struggled in the back half of the year with a very tough schedule. Saw 3, college football playoff participants in Notre Dame, SMU, and Clemson. And it didn't there were a lot of blowouts that back half of the season in a year that started promising, right? They were 4-1, and you thought this is the year they're going to get to a bowl game. Didn't happen. So that's kind of, I think, that the taste left in everybody's mouth who follows the ACC as a whole, and maybe isn't on Virginia looking at UVA's roster every single day.
Yeah. And you mentioned a little bit earlier about the transfer portal, how good our portal was and how much NIL funds Elliott had to play with this offseason. In terms of depth and talent, how do you think this year's roster compares to what you've seen over the past few seasons under Elliott?
Yeah, Jack, I think it's the best. And Tony said this. I think it's the best roster he's had since he's been at Virginia by a good bit. And the first thing that comes to mind is it feels like they finally played catch up on the offensive line. He's been trying ever since he took the job, right? They had that mass exodus of offensive linemen. Olu Oluwatimi was kind of the headliner after Bronco Mendenhall stepped down. Olu went to Michigan. Some others followed out the door. Haskins went to USC. So it was tough, right? And they really have tried to develop through the high school ranks. They've picked a transfer here and there. The best one of the bunch was probably Brian Stevens the last 2 years. But this year, what they did in the portal, I think Terry Heffernan said it to me in the spring, was like they started looking around the country, and SMU kind of built their offensive line through the transfer portal. Louisville had done it. So like the belief nationally had started to change in the sport where you could build an O-line through the portal and be okay, right? The thought was like, you got to grow those guys up together. They got to come in as high school recruits together. No, that's changed. That's changed. You can build a good O-line through the portal, and that's probably what this group is going to be. A mix of is guys who've been here a long time, and Mikhail Boley and Noah Josie, but probably the rest of the group, likely the rest of the group is going to be transfers, and you're banking on their experience and their ability to play, to show up and matter, and maybe kind of overcome that traditional thought of not growing up together in the same system. So that to me is where it starts. The D-line too is improved. Mitchell Melton from Ohio State and Fisher Kamak from UNLV, I think, is where it starts at the end spots. What I don't know yet is whether or not the secondary is going to be good.
Yeah.
There's nine new defensive
Right.
backs in that group transfer wise, Jack, and you look at it and it's like, yeah, and 7 of them came in after the spring, so they're still figuring out exactly what they have on the back end. That to me is probably the biggest question mark with the team, just because there's so many unknowns back there.
Mhm.
Yeah. And a lot of people have gone back and forth over the last few months during the offseason. You know, is 6 wins enough? Is 7 wins enough? A Tech win, is that enough? What, in your mind, does Coach Elliott have to prove in year 4 to show that this rebuild is right on track?
The schedule is manageable. I think you guys would agree with that. With what they have schedule wise, I mentioned that run of really tough opponents they had last year. They don't have that this year. There's no Clemson, Notre Dame. There's no the big boys. They miss SMU on the ACC schedule. So you look at UVA's schedule and you think there's opportunity there. Not that Virginia is head and shoulders more talented than the people the opponents they'll play, but they also should be in all those games and should have a chance to win all those games. So to me, I think you look at UVA's schedule. I think a bowl game is the best starting point. You get to a bowl, it's a sign of progress, and then if you get to 7 or you get to 8 wins, now you're really talking, and you're starting to see that maybe he and his staff have properly evaluated the portal, and maybe that's the way they'll make it work and continue. And you hope, if you're a Virginia fan, you start to see some of those high school kids that they've recruited come through and play an important role. Whether it's somebody at receiver or somebody in the back end or somebody on the defensive line. You start to hope, if you're a UVA fan, that comes to fruition.
Yeah. So, Greg, you talked about Chandler Morris being, a seasoned guy coming over. How does his experience change kind of what the offense can do, as a whole?
Yeah, it's an interesting thought, because Jay, right, he's coming from an air raid system his whole life, right? He played high school football in Texas. Oklahoma was an air raid team. So was TCU. So was North Texas. But when you play in that system, you have a whole heck of a lot of opportunity to throw the football, right? You're going to get your chances. So if there's something a defense does, he's probably seen it. What he needs to adjust to, of course, is playing within Tony Elliott's and Des Kitchings' more pro-style system. And I think that's something he wanted to do, knowing if he's going to get to the NFL, he's got to prove he can show that he can play within more pro-style system, more pro-style set. So I think with what you're going to get with Morris is he's not going to be afraid to spread the ball around. He's talked about that with me, and how, if you look back throughout his career, he's always divvied up where he throws the ball. He likes to just hit the open guy. He's kind of more of a point guard back there than anything else. And when you have that, you're going to get your receivers bought in. I think last year at North Texas, there were 5 games in which at least 10 receivers caught a pass. And then in all 12 games that he played, at least 8 receivers caught a pass. So You're going to get the distribution of the football. And I think that's a strength, right? Virginia has kind of been dominated by one receiver, right, the last couple of years in this system, where, 2 years ago it was Malik Washington. Last year it was Malachi Fields. This year, I think you're going to see it a little more split up, just because the quarterback's different and he's not looking in particular for one guy. So I think that's interesting. And then, of course, Des and Tony are going to have to figure out what his biggest strengths are within the system. There's some thought probably that it's throwing off play action and on the move. I think he showed a little bit of that in the spring. And then go from there and kind of tweak and adjust as the year goes on. I think Tony and Des are probably going to have to adjust too as the season goes on, to make sure Morris is totally comfortable and playing to his strengths within the system.
Yeah, I mean, people were so excited for Calandria last year, and I think what Morris gives you is what people thought they were going to get from Calandria.
I think that's fair. I think that's fair. Like it's Now, I haven't seen Morris play in person yet, so it's hard for me to say this, but like watching his games passed back and watching his previous stops, it's like you kind of see some of the similarities, some of the same traits. So I think that's a fair point.
Yeah. So we talked about the offensive line a little bit. Unfortunately we've got two guys we've already lost for the year coming in from the portal, and Monroe Mills and, as you mentioned, McKeelan Thomas. Did we do enough in the portal to feel good about where we're at? And I haven't heard a whole lot about the kid from JMU. Is it
Tyshawn Wyatt? Yeah,
Wyatt. That's right. Have you seen much out of him? And did we do enough, you think, in the portal?
Yeah, Virginia's going to find out. I mean, there's no doubt. There's no doubt, Jay. They're gonna find out here soon enough. Wyatt, he practiced the first couple of days, and he's been more on the sideline the last few practices that I've been there. So that's one that, and I covered him while he was at JMU when I was still on the JMU beat his first year, maybe when he was being recruited. I can't quite remember the timeline, but I covered him a little bit then. He's a good player. He can absolutely play, experienced, but he's had the injury issue. Right, missed all of last year with the injury after being hurt late in the 23 season. That was a season-ending injury, and Virginia's got to get him healthy. Got to see what they exactly have in him. Is he a guard? Can he compete at tackle? He played both at James Madison at a high level. In their move from the CAA to the Sun Belt and the FCS to the FBS. But Virginia's got to figure out how he can help them. If he's healthy, I would think he'd be in competition for that right guard spot. But right now, I'm probably thinking that Drake Metcalf might be the front runner there. And then Kevin Wigginton's also involved in the competition. The transfer from Illinois, who had started games at Michigan State. Metcalf, of course, missed all of last year with the Achilles injury after transferring in from Central Florida, and started his career at Stanford with Terry Heffernan. So to me, I think that's a position battle. And then they got to figure out right tackle now, because it was supposed to be McKeelan Thomas after it was supposed to be Monroe Mills. Yeah. So that's just tough. Like, Virginia did everything it could to try to have a very, very, very high level player at that position. And it just, two non-contact injuries early in, Mills early in spring, and then Thomas now on day 2 of training camp. So that's just tough. I don't know if there's anything they could do differently. Their options there is Ben York, a sophomore, David Wallaba, transfer from Syracuse, and then Wallace Unamba, who played for Bronco Mendenhall at New Mexico last season. And Jack Whitmer too, right? Can't forget about Jack. He played well at times last year. And could be an option there. So they've got to kind of figure both of those spots, right guard and right tackle, out.
Thank God they did all that work in the portal on the offensive line.
At least they have options who have played. Like, Wallaba started a game in the SEC. He started games in the ACC. Wallace Unamba was a very good offensive lineman at the Group of 5 level last year. So they have some players who have played. Which is different, right? You think back to Mikhail Boley's first season. He was thrown in the fire because of some injuries to some older guys. They didn't have anywhere else to turn. He was the most athletic guy, and they were like, "All right, put him out there, see how it goes." It's probably a situation not every freshman would want to be in when they haven't been playing football all that long. So interesting now that they have at least some veteran options.
Yeah. So are there some offensive weapons that you think are flying under the radar but could break out for this team?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, Jamari Taylor had a great spring, and I think he's going to be the top running back. It'll allow Xavier Brown to stay healthy and kind of do what he does in spurts. I think you'll see more of Xavier this year than you did last year because they wanted to get him more involved. But I think him and Taylor – Taylor's kind of the 1A guy, is what Keith Gaither, the running backs coach, told me. And then Brown is the 1B guy. So I think they're kind of going two-headed monster there, with Taylor being the top guy. At receiver, Cam Ross, transfer from James Madison, super fast, and gives them an extra element of speed, because they had it last year in Trell Harris until he got hurt.
Right.
So this kind of protects them in that department. So I think they'll see Cam Ross, and I think you'll see him on jet sweeps, on reverses, on those quick slant routes. I think he's your prototypical slot gadget type player who fans typically, I would think, get excited about just with the possibility when he has the ball in his hand. So that's where I'd start on offense. Trell Harris, of course, you guys know him at this point. I think as long as he stays healthy, he's due to have a very, very strong season.
Cool. What about defensively? What do you think Virginia must improve on this year to stay competitive?
Yeah, Jeff. Well, they got to get to the quarterback. And some of that starts with being better on first and second down is what coaches will tell me. Like they improved against the run last year, but it still wasn't great. So they've got to take another step forward in that department so they can get to some more 3rd and 8, 3rd and 9, 3rd and 11, right? Some of those more long third down situations where your pass rushers can get after it a little bit. But they got to be better against the pass rush. I mean, it's just an undeniable fact. They have to apply more pressure on quarterback to try to get some more turnovers too, in addition to sacks and negative plays. They're hoping Fisher Kamak and Mitchell Melton will help in that department. I think two interesting players, Jacob Holm from Fresno State, 8.5 sacks over the last 2 years, and that's from the interior. They really haven't had a guy push from the interior like that. Now you got to see if it translates from the Mountain West to the ACC, but at least there's some track record of an interior player being able to rush the passer.
Yeah, and more on the defensive side of the ball. You mentioned earlier a little bit about that secondary, a lot of transfer defensive backs. What can you tell us about some of those defensive backs? Obviously, Morris just went down the other day. He tore his ACL. But with having 9 transfer defensive backs, we really don't know. Is that going to be optimism, concern? What do you know?
Yeah, this is a big question mark, Jack. Big question mark for sure. I think, just to break it down to how their position groups break down back there, they need to find 2 starting cornerbacks, right? That's where you first start. I think Devin Neal will start at safety. When he was being recruited, he was basically told he's going to fill the old Jonas Sanker role of the last year. So I think he's locked in at one of the safety spots. After that, you still need to find another safety because you don't know exactly what you're going to get from Antonio Clary at this point in his career, right? I mean, you hope for the best, but you don't know. And then you got to figure out how you're going to handle those spur and nickel responsibilities. Is it going to be one guy playing one spot and staying on the field at all times like Corey Thomas did early last year? Or are you going to have to roll out multiple guys in that extra defensive back role? Are you going to have a nickel corner specifically and a spur specifically and have them come on and off the field as the down and distance change? Or are you just going to play one player in that spot? So I think that's kind of where you have to start. To me, at corner, probably the lead guy would be Donovan Platt, the transfer from Army. Started 14 games last year for them when they won the American Conference. One of their biggest, highly regarded ads in the transfer portal after the spring. At safety, there are a couple options beyond Devin Neal. Of course, there's DeMarcus Crosby in from New Mexico State. Was a productive player there. Was also productive at Sam Houston earlier in his career. And then at the spur nickel, however you want to term it, nickel is probably more Jason Prevard from Morgan State, who had been practicing there all spring. I think spur, you got an option in Corey Costner, a true freshman, who was an early enrollee. He's been a name that's kind of drawn some buzz, not only in the spring, but in this training camp too. And then Christian Charles has been a little dinged up in training camp, but I would think he'd have to factor into that mix as well.
Yeah, somebody else who's kind of been in the media news lately, a couple articles about him, Ethan Mincer, who I'm really intrigued by. Obviously he had some bright spots last year, but you bring in all those defensive backs, you bring in Devin Neal, and so that's kind of going to be your starting free safety. I was kind of wondering because it was funny. You just mentioned the nickel formation. Do you think would it be crazy if he was in as that extra defensive back, or where do you see his role being this year?
Yeah, it's a good question, right? He's the only freshman to play in every game last year for UVA. So I think at this point he probably knows all three spots, and depending on what they need, maybe they shift him to where they need to go. But I would have a hard time seeing him start over some of the transfers they brought in. But I think he can definitely contribute this year, and maybe. Depending on some of the injury situations, that's where you might see him. Depending on Antonio Clary's health and some of the other things they have going, Christian Charles. So there's a couple of ways that he could get on the field. But I think as a former high school quarterback, he's learned the defense really well to this point in his career, and has shown at times he can make some plays in the secondary like he did last season.
Yeah, for sure. So just as an overall standpoint now, what would you say is the ceiling for this 2025 team if everything clicks? And what is the floor if the same issues from last year linger?
The ceiling, if everything clicks and the O-line is good, and I know Tony's talked about this a little bit already in this training camp, if they don't make the bad penalties, if they don't have the special teams blunders, like 8-9 wins if everything goes well, right? Like that to me is probably a fair assessment. They led in the fourth quarter in 9 of their 12 games last year. They've lost, I think of Elliott, of the 23 losses they've had in Elliott's tenure, I believe 9 have come by 10 points or fewer. So like they've been in a lot of games. So if you can eliminate some of those mistakes and get better offensive line play, I think 8 is fair, especially with the schedule. If everything goes bad and it's the same thing over and over again, I don't know, 4 is probably I think the floor is a little higher. I think 4 or 5 would be the floor.
Elliott would be on the hot seat, in other words.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, undoubtedly.
So where do you think they fall? Do you have a final record prediction?
Yeah, I think they're going to get to 7. I think they're going to get to 7. Yeah, I do. I think
Jeff's hoping for that. Hit that over 6.5.
Yeah. Yeah.
I just think with the understanding of the quarterback position with Morris, more options on the offensive line, even though it's taken a little bit of a hit here lately, and then some maybe the possibility of the team being able to run the ball and being an older team that doesn't make as many mistakes, like that to me is kind of what puts them in that 7 range for me. If they get to 8, great. If they get to 9, man, they'll throw a party.
There you go.
So, I mean, I think with this, I don't know how you guys feel, but like with the schedule, like
that's it.
I dream crazy with this schedule. I said I dream a little bit crazy with this schedule. I look at the schedule and I'm like, should we figure out a way to win at NC State, and then should we figure out Florida State at home Friday night?
Yeah.
You know, maybe the crowd carries you. I mean, at Louisville to me is the toughest game on the schedule.
And they've played Louisville close.
Exactly.
Right? I mean, that's a game the last 2 years that could have gone Virginia's way. I was talking to Jeff Brom at ACC Kickoff a couple weeks ago, and he's like, man, Virginia's been so close against us. And he was telling me, he's like, that's just a matter of like finding a way to finish. He's like, they've been really, really close. He thought like talent-wise to Louisville, but for whatever reason, Louisville found a way to win those games. So I think that's probably their toughest game on paper going into the year.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, with Morris and like you say, I mean, you look at the team, I mean, there's just not there's no glaring weakness. Sure, we may not be the best in the country at any position or anything like that, obviously, but we don't have a spot where it's like, oh my God, what are we going to do?
Yeah. I think the secondary, the one thing you can say is like John Radzinski and Karom Cox, the coordinator and defensive backs coach, they've had to do this in their careers at UVA every year, plug in new corners. I mean, it's been kind of a revolving door of a position for Virginia. So they've had some practice at it. I think that the one thing about the secondary is just though they don't have Jonas Sanker on the roster anymore.
Yeah.
Like, he covered up a lot and played
There's
a
some
lot
big
of
shoes to
snaps.
fill. Big shoes.
Yeah. So as much as the transfer stuff is encouraging, and you think they're going to get some production in the secondary, like they're still going to be missing their best player from the last 2 seasons. I think it's fair to say.
Yep.
Right.
So we're from the 757. I was just wondering, you talk about a secondary. What about CJ Spence? Have you seen much out of him, or?
I think it's just going to take a little bit, right? Young guy.
Red shirt guy, you think?
I would think so, just based on how many transfers they've brought in. To me, like the you're talking true freshman guys who could see the field. From what I've heard, Corey Costner I mentioned already. Sean John, defensive tackle. I know Tony told me down at ACC kickoff, he's like, this dude's 300 pounds. He was tearing it up in the spring. I don't know how much he'll play, but I think he's a possibility to get some action this year. And then Josiah Abdullah, the slot receiver. He's got some older guys ahead of him, and Cam Ross and Sedarian Harrison, Cam Courtney. But it wouldn't shock me to see he was – right when he committed, I think he was the highest rated recruit of the Elliott era. To that point, just a click ahead of Cam Robinson.
Right.
It wouldn't shock me to see him find a way onto the field.
So let's switch gears a little bit here and talk a little bit of basketball, Greg.
Sure.
What did you think about Virginia scrapping the secret closed door scrimmage for the exhibition game against Villanova at home? Just to build excitement, or what?
I like it. I think it's cool. I think it's a good thing to do. Gives fans, right? Nobody knows these players, right? I mean, from a fan perspective, like the average fan who isn't reading every single transfer portal story I write, like they don't know who exactly is on the team. They may have an idea, like, oh, they got a guy from Germany. They brought in a transfer from North Dakota State, but they don't know the roster. Like, this gives the fans at least a chance to see the roster and a new coaching staff in front of them against a recognizable opponent, right? And Villanova, like people know the tradition of Villanova basketball. So I think that's a positive. It gets your fan base involved and gives them, at an affordable price, right? That Virginia's giving away tickets to season ticket holders for the game, and they're only charging, I think, $25 for general admission, which is great. Yeah. I think that's great. It's a good starting point. So I think that's positive. I like that out of the gate. My only thing tricky for me is to figure out if that Carolina football game is a noon kick the next day. I'm gonna have to do some driving down 29 in the night.
Yeah.
Oh man, what's your early sense of what maybe some of their strengths are, and what's the biggest concern?
Yeah, Jeff, a 3-point shooting I think will be a strength. Like, you look at how many right around 40% or plus 40% 3-point shooters they recruited, proven at the college level. Jakari White, Sam Lewis, of course. Johan Grunlow, right, in Germany, or in where he was playing professional ball. So to me, I think that's probably one of the strengths. Ryan's team is going to want to push the pace. So I think that'll be a fascinating transformation for fans to get adjusted to, of course. Yeah. And even people within the program who'd been part of Tony's regimen. Like, I was talking to Mike Curtis the other day, the strength coach, and he was talking about adjusting to having to train the team to be ready to push the pace. So that'll be fascinating. They've got some accomplished players. You see around the country, like some of the national folks saying it's kind of one of the more underrated transfer classes. But they'll have a lot of guys who need to prove they can do it at the high major level. A lot of good mid-major players in that. But typically that does translate in hoops.
Yeah, and so on that, only one scholarship player returning, Elijah Gertrude, 3 players returning from last year. How big of a challenge is the chemistry going to be for this team this season?
Yeah, that's a great point. I think with the way they did it, with bringing in so many older guys, I think that could help. I think Devin Tillis, like he seems like one of those. What's the cliche? Like glue guys, somebody who can bring everybody together. And I know there's been some like crossover between guys who had played at different, AAU circuits together. So there's some familiarity with a few of the players on the roster. I think it'll be okay. Like basketball, it feels like is even more transient than football, and you see it done a little more often in basketball where the roster's totally retooled after a coaching change. So I think it's probably more attainable in basketball than it is football. It's less guys too, right?
Right.
You're talking only 12, 13 guys compared to football, which is 100, 110, 105, whatever.
Right.
And sometimes even without a coaching change now, it's a whole retooled lineup.
Yeah, if things aren't going well, there are some schools that just blow it up and start over.
That's right.
Yeah. Talk to us a little bit about the international additions of DeRitter, Grunlow. What do you think they're going to bring to the roster?
Yeah, I think with DeRitter, right, that kind of rave reviews that he would have been a draftable guy. And you saw even some of that with Grunlow. So I think it'll be interesting. I think Grunlow fits kind of what they want to do, getting up and down the floors. Somebody with that size who can shoot. That's going to be impressive. And it's so fascinating to see, these guys have been playing pro basketball, coming over and playing the college game with DeRitter, right? The big storyline is, is he going to be eligible? How many years of eligibility is he going to have? What year are you going to classify him as? So, it's a whole, I think it's interesting. I think they'll both help immediately. You don't pursue the DeRitter situation unless you think he's going to help you, right? With some of the hoops and hurdles you got to jump through to get him. So I think they're going to be good players. Like you guys said, it's a matter of them kind of figuring out and gelling to figure out what they have exactly and what rotations work well together. So it should be exciting. Like it'll be fun to watch it come together if it all works out.
Yeah, and with the coaching change of Coach Odom coming in, obviously, we do fully expect to see, different style of basketball. But do you think at all that we will see any of that defensive DNA that's defined UVA basketball in the Bennett era, or is this going to be completely full philosophical reset?
I think it'll be a reset. I mean, there are different ways to go about it, and even in Odom's career, they've played some different defenses. That staff, they've pressed at times in their time together. They've also played some hard half court defense. And I know from talking to a few of the assistants that they told me back, not long after they got the job that, they really try to be flexible and play to what the strength of their players are defensively. Offensively, they're probably a little more what they are, right? Getting up and down the floor, spacing. They're big on passing the basketball and setting up for being a high assist team. And I think the stats show that over the last couple of years, going back to Utah State and UMBC in those days. So to me, I think they're going to be flexible. You've seen him play multiple style defenses. Curtis mentioned to me when we talked that he was going to have them ready to run and press. So I wouldn't be surprised to see this very athletic team do some of that.
And we need to know, are the fans in the stands, are we going to be getting excited over shot clock violations still, or is that over? Is that in the past?
I guess we'll see. I'm going to figure that out too, right? I still got to learn this team and see them in action. But I do. I mean, I don't think the defensive end will be ignored. I know that's some worry. There's some worry from the fans that, like, after years of that being the identity, that it's just going to be forgotten about. No, I mean, it's still Virginia. And I still think you're going to have a coach who understands that's part of Virginia's, part of what made Virginia over the last, decade and a half under Tony Bennett. So I think you'll see a commitment to playing good defense. It may not be the same way. Right? It's going to be different.
It won't be the same way.
So
they'll loosen the rims a little bit now.
Hey, whatever.
So what do you think Coach Odom would call a success in his first year? I mean, obviously we took a step back last year. So what would be a successful year?
I think probably this is a good question. I'm having to think about this on the spot. You don't want to put an NCAA tournament on the guy in his first year, right? But I think like a plus 500 record and in the conversation for a spot in the NCAA? Like, is that reasonable to you guys?
Yeah, I got them in the Final Four.
I would be disappointed if we weren't in the field
around the
comfortably.
bubble somewhere.
Whether we do anything once we're there, that's tough to say. But with the pieces, you brought in, DeRitter being a pro, Grunlow being a pro.
Yeah.
I mean, you're talking. I know we haven't seen these guys, but I don't think we had a guy that could score 20 in an open gym aside from McNeely last year.
Yeah.
Malik Thomas coming in.
Yeah.
He's a walking
bucket.
Talent.
Yeah. Yeah. He's a walking bucket. Jakari White, like he had some ridiculous games at North Dakota State. Mm-hmm. I think, they have options who can score the basketball. I don't think that's going to be an issue. Devin Tillis, I think, is going to be a heck of a player for them. Whether he's coming off the bench or in a starting lineup.
Yeah. So this is probably an unfair question because we really hadn't seen him. But is this team capable of Sweet 16 or further?
I'm not going to say no.
Yes.
I'm not going to say no, but I don't know yet. I don't know yet.
Yeah.
You can't say no on this podcast.
Not yet.
No. Yep. But no, Greg, we really appreciate your time. Can you tell our folks where they can find your work?
Yeah, dailyprogress.com or richmond.com is paid. The stories are in Charlottesville, Richmond, Roanoke, whatever paper Lee Enterprise owns. They run the stuff. So you find it at Greg Madia on Twitter too. All the links to the different stories.
That's awesome. We really appreciate your time and
guys,
giving us all this knowledge. It's nice to hear what's going on at camp and from somebody who's right there at it.
Yeah, guys. Thanks for having me, Jeff, Jay, Jack. It was nice to meet you down in Charlotte.
Yeah, man.
So thanks for having me on.
For sure. Hopefully we'll get to see you at a game or two this year.
Yeah, for sure. Yep, I'm always there.
There you go. Yep. Have a great evening.
Yeah, you guys too. Take care.
You too.
Thanks again to Greg Madia for joining us tonight. It was great content, great stuff. It's good to hear, like you guys said, to hear somebody that's there every day, there at the practices, there at fall camp. We're just over here in the 757. We can't drive out to Charlottesville every day, so we got to hear our insight from somebody.
Yeah. I'm glad to be able to hear from Greg as he's right out there on the field with all the inside information. So great information.
I'm glad to hear we have so much depth. I know we have it, but when you start hearing somebody else and they're naming names and it's like, the Thomas injury, the Mills injury, they're hard to hear. And they're also difficult to recover from, but we do have options. We're not down to, a walk-on who's, trying to break into his first college game or something. We've got guys that have played and that we were really excited to get in the portal when we got them. And so, the too deep is hurt and, you got a different starter than you thought you were going to have. But, I think we've got some depth.
I was going to say, and even, there were so many transfers that came in. You forget names.
Yeah.
And I say I forget names of all the different, and then he's naming, oh, yeah, I forgot about him. Oh, yeah. So thank God for that after the way this week has been.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. We want to thank all of you for listening tonight. Be sure to go check out thecavalierconnection.com. That is thecavalierconnection.com. Lots of great articles and stuff on there. And all the social medias as well. Go ahead.
Also, I was going to mention on the cavalierconnection.com, on our front page, we have a link to Mensers as well as on the articles over the last 2-3 articles, we got the link to Mensers. Listen, we talked about it earlier, get something for your kids for these football games. Mensers has been established since 1948. It's a family-run business. As Jay and I used to work at the little grocery store in Franklin, and he'd always say, look out for the little man. Look out for the little man there on the corner in Charlottesville. And not only that, you're helping the Cavalier Connection. If you click that link and you go and support Mensers, you're also supporting us. So go check that out. Just click the link. Check out the orange tag sales. Get Get some gear for the football games. Look out for Mensers and look out for the Cavalier Connection.
Yep.
Yep, for sure. And be sure to go follow all the social medias, cavalierconnection.com, X at Talk UVA Sports, and then, of course, on YouTube, the Cavalier Connection. With that being said, that's all we got for you guys tonight. Go Hoos!
Go Hoos!
Go Hoos.